There are times when you have to draw a line in the sand, and that's perfectly fine. As the business owner, I hope that you fully understand why you are drawing that specific line. And it sounds like this sounds like in that case, you were very clear about why you were making the decision that you made, and you held true to it, right? So
One of the biggest hotspots for business owners, business leaders, for managers at companies is getting employees to follow direction. In this conversation I have with Dr. Carrie Graham, she's going to talk about how you can understand the methods to motivate your employees to want to follow your lead, but also to want to upskill themselves and to get more training so they can do a better job at a higher level. You're not going to want to miss this. This is pure information to take your business to the next level. Stay tuned and enjoy. All right, I'm excited to be here with Dr. Carrie Graham. We are talking about strategy today, pure business strategy, building training programs, communication in your business. And the reason I always say I'm excited to have a guest here. I always say, but today I'm really excited. But I'm excited, period, regardless. I'm just an excitable kind of guy. And today we're talking about not just Dr. Graham's training method and how she kind of develops that, but also we're just talking about how you can just improve your business, making it more efficient, and how you can communicate effectively, which is, to be honest with you, a really big problem with a lot of businesses today that they don't do that. Dr. Graham, welcome to the Common Sense Show.
Oh, Micah, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to having a very common sense conversation. And I say that because sadly, that's not the approach that many businesses take when it comes to building and strategizing their training programs. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
So you're an adult learning strategist and a consultant. And I don't mean to demean adults, but at times when you're a business, it can be like you are managing, without risk of offending people who are in an insane asylum, but like that culture of people kind of bringing people to the table. Like, tell me what an adult learning strategist and consultant does.
Right. So let me first clarify, when we think about, I use the theoretical definition of an adult learner, and that is someone who is in 26 and older. And the reason that I really stick true to that definition is because the executive system of the brain, so our critical thinking, higher level judgment, that is all developed and for the most part finished developing mid to late 20s. Also, by that point, people bring their own experiences. They have some level of work related experience that they leverage when they're experiencing business and their various training programs. So that's the level of individual that I'm focused on supporting. Now, when it comes to being the strategist, I'm all things efficiency, all things best practices. And so we're going to figure out how to make the training program reflective of the mission and vision, but also so that it actually supports learning. Because when people learn and understand a thing, that's when they actually do the thing.
Yeah, no, it's very smart. And the thing about being an effective manager or business leader or business owner that I found in my coaching. So you may not know much about me, but I'm a business coach and a fractional executive, and I've worked with businesses across a half dozen industries. So I've gotten a unique perspective of being able to understand how different businesses interact with people. I have an acronym I call STUPID, which are stupid mistakes that business owners make, which are the basket of mistakes that I find that business owners make from having worked with them over years.
Right.
The reason why I bring that up is because one of the major mistakes that people make is within my stupid framework is poor planning and too complicated, which is the T, right? And stupid. So the T and the complication often comes in when a business owner, a business leader, or a manager is trying to communicate something, but the expectation of what they want the outcome to be doesn't match the delivery system and the ability for the person for whom the message is intended for is given the resources to understand that so that they can then turn that into action that actually benefits the person who's communicating to them.
Right. No, that makes all the sense in the world. And what you're talking about in that level of work that you do, it is consistent in the training and development, learning and development, talent development space. It's we want people to do X, Y, and Z, but yet how that is supported to happen, that's no thought, or I shouldn't say no, minimal thought or disjointed thought.
Feels like no thought sometimes.
Yeah, it does. But oftentimes it's disjointed. And that is my sweet spot. Like, I view it as being invited into people's homes within their organization and, respectfully identifying how can we make this a seamless experience that is meaningful? Because that's what's important.
Respectfully doing that. You're better than me already. So, but like, no, you're right. And so I have, I run about four companies right at the moment. And, I sold one about a year and a half ago, and I started more because I'm a masochist. And I have a business partner in one of my companies who I always say to him, this is his first foray into being a leader, in anything, specifically, leading people in a business, that the statement "it's obvious" should never come out of your mouth when you are a business leader. And that is the kiss of death. It's like when you're trying to give somebody advice about how they can get better and you tell them that you did good, right? It's like the death of a person's ability to upskill themselves.
Right. It's, that's one of those things that are included in a strategic training program. It's that how are we using feedback? So how are we delivering it? How are we collecting it? How are we analyzing it? How are we making decisions based on feedback, which is data? And so you're absolutely right, Micah. There's, when business owners or executives are thinking about strategically designing and developing and facilitating their training programs, there are some nuances that you have to attend to that, to use your words, will make or break you.
Let's talk about getting people to do what you want, because essentially that's what communication is.
Yeah.
Sometimes getting a person to understand, but even having a person understand what you're saying is getting them to do what you want, which is to get across kind of what you're trying to say. Yeah. There is this gap where it's like, I told him to do this. And oftentimes I see this when business owners have made the jump from being, for instance, like even if they were in a high level position as a senior executive at a corporation, but now they're actually running a business. But I told them to do this and they just don't get it done. And then the question, if you kind of drill down like at least one or two levels, is, well, how did you tell them to do it? Did you just tell them and expect them to get it done? Or did you communicate it to them? Because those are two different things.
Correct. Well, to that, one of the things that, I encourage people to consider is the communication. It is about the messaging that you are putting forth, but it's also the individual's capacity to understand and process and make decisions based on what you're saying. And oftentimes there are a number of assumptions being made, right? So I'll just use a very generalized one. The assumption is that English is their first language,
Mhm.
right? Well, English as a native speaker, English proficiency, those are two different things. They
Mhm.
may be closely related, but there is a slight difference. If you also are looking at language from a regional perspective, right? Um, if you look at it from a global and cultural perspective, there are differences in how um, communication is accepted,
Mhm.
and that can, in fact, become a barrier to understanding. So I always go back to who is the recipient of the information, whether it's training information or in your case, communication information. Who is the recipient? And have I made adjustments so that I've removed all barriers so that they can readily receive what it is that I'm putting forth? And
What
that's the human element of it.
what's the best way to understand how to um, have a high level communication with your employees if you're a small business owner or entrepreneur? How can you ensure that when you communicate that you're effective every time without babysitting them?
Yeah, yeah. I would say, and this is going to sound brash, but it's not
I
about
like
you.
it. I like it.
It's not about you. It's not about you. Granted, this is your business,
Yep.
or this is the division of the organization that you are overseeing, but the work
Mhm.
isn't about you. It is about them. And so you have to check your pride, check your ego, put your needs and demands aside, even if it's for a short period, and prioritize that individual, prioritize your team's needs.
Yeah.
That's
No.
that's how you make it happen, honestly.
So that goes into a piece of advice, and typically, this two pieces of advice I give when I first start coaching with a client. So the first piece of advice are two business principles that I live by, and then the second piece of advice is something that I think is just useful. Um, so the two business principles that I often give are: you need radical humility in business to learn and to be able to actually make positive change, because you have to be a learner to be a good successful business owner, and
Mhm.
that has been kind of studied and is evident, and it's been espoused by all the great entrepreneurs of our time. You can just pick one, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, like all these guys are learners. They constantly learn. And then the second principle in that first framework is never make the same mistake twice, because it's easy to say, hard to do. But as humans, we do have the capacity to learn. Some of us are more stubborn than others, but typically successful business owners do not make the same mistake twice. Fool me once, shame on me, right? Principle.
Well, Mike, I'm gonna have to push back on that and
Ooh, I
say,
knew you would. This is great.
yeah, yeah. I know that people do in fact make the same mistake more than once.
Mhm,
And the reason is it's because they didn't learn.
mhm.
They didn't learn what to do differently, what to think differently, or what to say different, like to believe. That's the other one, to believe differently. And it's when learning doesn't happen, people will they will repeatedly make the same mistakes repeatedly. It's the learning has to happen.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think we're actually on the same side of the coin. I think
Mhm.
there's an ellipsis after "don't make the same mistake twice," which is for the following reasons, because
Right.
you should investigate why. There's a lot that goes to that.
Right,
You
right,
went
right.
you went all academic with me, citing your sources and stating. Um, so yeah, so yes, the whole fleshed out point is you don't make the same mistake twice, because you should assess
You
why you
should
made
be.
the mistake. You should unpack that. You should understand where the mistake came from. You should make the adjustments to not make it again, and not all the other stuff. So
All the
that's good.
shoulds.
Yeah.
All the shoulds, but I will say, we all, right? Like, I'm gonna put myself in there. We all should have done a lot of things.
Yes.
But the reality is there are like life
Mm-hmm.
gets in the way sometimes. And that's where many business owners make the mistake of they don't acknowledge that, well, life may have gotten in the way for this individual. And
Unpack
that
that.
is
Explain that to
that's
me.
yeah, that's in no way to make an excuse for anyone. So if
Because
you
it
are
sounds like an excuse for me. So I just need you to explain it.
yeah. So if you are a small business owner and you have a very small team, 2 or 3,
Yeah.
4 people, and let's say there was a storm, a catastrophic storm in the region, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your people are still able to come to work, do their job, but you recognize, why are you being distracted? Why are you not paying attention? Why are you, if it's related to customer service, you're kind of rushing people along, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not always a time to reprimand, but it is in fact an opportunity to say, let me pull you aside. What's really going on?
Mm-hmm.
You just went through a training on we'll just say on customer service. Why it appeared that you know right from wrong or whatever. Why the problem today?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm really distracted because my aging parent is at home with no power and
Mm-hmm.
it's the winter. So I'm distracted.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an instance where life can get in the way and not prevent, but delay someone's ability to do the thing that they've been trained on or that they've learned to do. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not that the skills are not there, but there's something else cognitively that is limiting or hindering, as my mother would say, hindering their ability to move forward.
So do you reject I think the saying is, don't bring your personal life to work. I can't remember exactly, but you know
Yeah.
the gist from hearing that. What's your
You,
thoughts on that?
there was a point in my life where I say, absolutely,
Mm-hmm.
you need to keep the two separate. And the longer that I've done the work that I've been doing, given the current state of workforce in this
Mm-hmm.
country, at least in the US, um, I can no longer stand true to that. I firmly believe that we really need to bring the human element
Mm-hmm.
to the workplace. Now, it's not to say that we all need to sit and hold hands and cover ourselves with a blanket and I'm not proposing that, but we do need to acknowledge that human beings are the most valuable asset to your organization. You
Mm-hmm.
can no longer expect your business to succeed and do well and flourish if you are not attending to the people that run your business.
You know, it's funny because as generations have gone on, and um, this has become a cornerstone of certain generations. Like you have the silent
Mhm.
generation, you have
Yeah,
baby
yeah,
boomers, right? And then
yeah.
we know that and so I'm like on the border between being Generation X and babe and um
Millennial.
yeah, they call me a geriatric millennial, or basically Gen X. It feels great, by the way, to hear that. But I grew up in a time when work didn't require a why behind it, and essentially, like, so when I
Mhm.
started working, when I was doing what I was, uh, just like in my work life, the thing that mattered the most to me was my ability. So to recognize competence and
Mhm.
ability to me was really important, of course, um, and performance was really important, and so that was kind of like the most important things to me, more so than like how I'm doing individually. I would probably look
Yeah.
at you with two heads if you ask me, well, how are you doing at work? Like my manager, it's like,
Right.
well, how are you doing? Like,
Right.
um, and but for Gen Z and Generation Alpha, like this kind of new coming generation, these whys behind their work seem to be really important for them. And as you mentioned, the human element seems to be kind of particularly important to them to some degree. And
Yeah.
while I might have some differences with them in terms of the structure of that relationship to work and their personal life, as an employer of Generation Z individuals, for sure, I've had to ask more questions than I answered. For sure, I've just noticed that switch.
Yeah. So I am a 10 toes deep in the Gen X, right? And so that's where I sit.
Mm-hmm.
But
and nobody calling you geriatric though. That's
no. Every now and again I might feel it, but no. But there is, again, I have done a lot of work with young professionals in different stages of my career.
mm-hmm.
And I am an advocate of independent abilities, self-efficacy, self-regulation, self-directedness. Like, you got to be able to navigate on your own, right? I cannot hold you. I'm not your mama.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say that when we are looking at burnout,
Mm-hmm.
when we look at middle management and executives who are holding those positions,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes they are in 2025, they are individuals who are Gen X, like yourself. Older millennials are finding themselves in those positions as well.
Like
And you can't edit that part out. You can't edit that part out, right? But it is also a change of life, right?
Yep.
So like, that's when I speak on the recognizing the human element. It's what stage of life are these people in?
Mm-hmm.
And how can you leverage that? Gen Z and Alpha, yes, they're making their way, but you do have to develop and hone your own skills. And
Right.
people aren't going to just pass you on up the career ladder just because you exist and you think you deserve it. No, that is not what I'm advocating for. I'm advocating that as a business owner, as a business culture, these are people,
Mm-hmm.
first and foremost. And then what action are you taking to support them so that they are fulfilling the job in a way that matters not only to you, but also to them?
How are you creating that scaffold up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right?
I love it.
So, yeah, no, so, right. So yes. So what you say is true. So like, I just naturally am someone who asks more questions than I answer, which tends to typically go well across generations because people like talking about themselves. And that is typically associated with high level communication and listening. I'm a pretty good listener. Do I have, now we've obviously made this a therapy session. Do I have problems with the work ethic and what people call the work ethic of this new generation? I don't think it's necessarily the work ethic of the new generation. I think part of it is that she disagrees. If faces could kill, I'd be dead. Actually, I am lying. It is kind of the work ethic of this generation. And is it the safe spaces? Can we be honest? Is this a safe space to talk about safe spaces? Because
absolutely.
Are you familiar with Jonathan Haidt's work on the coddling of American mind? Have you read anything about that?
I have not. I'm sure I've heard of, but I am not steeped and well versed.
So part of like his, and I'm going to butcher this to some degree, I guess, but part of his hypothesis is that over the generations, so from the mid to early to mid-ish 90s, um, things started changing around parenting, and
Yeah.
specifically how, number one, how playgrounds were even built. Right, they went from like the hard astroturf to the rubberized
Mhm.
flooring, from the
Mhm.
metal I will burn the skin off your back slides, to the plastic
Yes.
playgrounds that are slightly
Yeah.
rounded, less sharp, like to prevent the children from being hurt. There was a significant increase in parents not allowing their children to go unassisted and unguided to the park down the street, and
Yep.
and having to navigate the travel from home to the playground, from the playground back home, which means that
Yep.
you have to wait for traffic. You're going to encounter a homeless person if you live in the city. Like, someone's going to scream at you because you're a stupid kid and they want you to get out their way. And you have to learn how to manage all this stuff, right? And because of that, there has been this kind of, it's had an effect on the kind of this generation of children, this coddling effect,
Yes.
where there's always been this safe, it started safe space, right? So the playground went from admittedly a death trap, because I've been knocked out at the playground and I've had my skin burned. So there's some utility in making some of those things safer, but like, it just went from that to like kind of maybe a little bit too maternalistic. And what has
Yeah.
happened now is there is a lot of this coddling that's happened to like this whole generation of kids who are like, I need this space to express myself. Well, why do you need this space for you to express yourself, like at work right now, right?
And that is
I
at
thought it.
the, like, with disregard for other people. Like,
Yes,
that's what I draw the line is,
sure.
I'm for all the things. Like, if you knock yourself out. But
We'll talk about all the things in a minute, I guess, but go ahead.
yes, but what I think a part of maturity, emotional intelligence, as well as work ethic, is that you are able to navigate space with other people, and it is not solely about you and your needs only.
Mm,
Only. Now
mhm.
that I think is where, because what I don't want is for anyone to hear this conversation and be like, "Oh, so she is not an advocate for inclusion." That is not what I'm saying, right?
Mhm.
Everyone can have a place, but it should not be at the detriment, at the exclusion of anyone else.
Mhm.
I can't, I cannot move beyond that. And to your point about the coddling and the ways in which parenting has evolved over the years, absolutely, it has had a direct impact on our workforce. And, I think, well, I know that we can all sit and continue to have the same conversation and point the finger at who's doing it wrong or where the mistakes happened. But at what point are we going to say, all right, it is what it is? Like, this is who we got. And this is
Mhm.
what they bring to the table. This is these are the characteristics of our individuals who are entering the workforce. It is what it is. How are we going to make this work? We need them, they need us.
Mhm.
We got to be able to figure it out. And that's the role that I play, is let's figure that part out.
So you're for Taco Tuesdays at work because it makes them
Well,
happy.
you know, I just like a good taco. So anytime food's involved, I'm all for it. Like
Yeah.
smoothie Saturdays, like whatever it is,
Right.
meat or meatless Monday, I don't care. Just can we eat something? But
Never thought about
it's
Meatless Monday. That
meatless
might be a
Monday,
capital offense, though. It might, in the country that I run. Meatless Monday.
you know, or meat filled Monday. I don't know, but
There you go.
I just want to eat something. I just want to eat something. But
Yes.
it's the how are we, what is the culture within the organization, and not simply the culture to say that we have a culture, but how is it really functioning? It's
Right. Well, I
yes,
think that organizational culture is important, though. You have to have something to rally around, um, right? Like,
Mhm.
so, okay. So let's talk about this. So I'll give you an example. I'll use my company in this therapy session that we're having as an
Of
example.
course.
This is a company that I sold, and nobody I'm going to talk about works for me any longer. So I adopted what I call the neutral, politics policy in my organization. We do not do
Mhm.
politics. Period. End of story. Everyone thinks differently about politics, um, and and that's fine, and that's okay. And
Yeah.
it used to be okay. I don't know what's going on now, but like it used to be okay. And so there were no endorsements of any candidates. I didn't allow local political candidates and people running even for dog catcher to put their flyers into my windows. Um,
Right.
and neither will we talk politics with our customers. We service them, and we had conversations about life, generally speaking.
Yeah.
And what I found is that there was a higher level of employee engagement because they felt comfortable just having
Mhm.
engaging with my company because there was no real fear of what they said, and what they did.
Mhm.
Um, and that that raised the level of compete with everything. There was only one time I had tension, and that was with a customer, and it was because, and I'll tell this story, and you can comment on it if you want. But there was this guy around the corner who had something happen to his business, and he asked me to temporarily use my space. And he had a Blue Lives Matter flag in his space, and
Mhm.
which, like, I don't really care. I'm not really whatever. And so I had a customer come in, and she was like, that guy had a Blue Lives Matter flag in his thing, and I was like, and like, yeah, like, okay, if someone shoots you in the face, you want these guys to come and save you, like, but she was just like, yeah, but like, how could you let someone like this use your space? I was like,
Mm.
someone like what? I said, so my response to her was, I've had at least a half a dozen interactions with this gentleman personally.
Yep.
And every interaction I had with him, he was kind,
Mhm.
straightforward, humble, um, responsive, communicative, and from all regards, he has a overwhelmingly positive reputation in this community.
Right.
So what are we talking about? So I made my space available to him. And she goes, it was kind of humorous, of course. And she said this in jest, right? But she was just like, "Oh, I just can't get you to hate him. I can't get you on my side." I'm like, "No, I'm not on the side.
No.
Like
No.
I'm
No.
on the side. Like, and we've lost this, like, leader's ability to just say, yeah, and this person is this or believes that. It's all right, cool. But like, but they're still like, I actually know this person, and like, I haven't had like the level of interaction which you have. And then,
Right.
but like, what that did though is it kind of calmed her down, right? It really,
Uh,
she didn't really kind of go like nuclear, but she was kind of just, it made her think like, oh, well, I guess I can. And she was perfectly fine. She didn't die, you know.
right. 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 That's, it's interesting because as a business owner, there are times when you have to draw a line in the sand. And that's perfectly fine. As the business owner, I hope that you fully understand why you are drawing that specific line. And it sounds like in that case, you were very clear about why you were making the decision that you made, and you held true to it, right? So you're not engaging, you're not coddling, right? Like, oh, I'm going to coddle her and her response and her feelings and her thought. No, this is what I'm doing and this is what we're going to do for these reasons. That I can get with. I can totally get with. It's the, well, why don't you think I should do this? And, well, let's talk about, no, right? Like, there are some times when all voices, like, keep your opinions to yourself. It
Yeah.
it doesn't have a place. And that's a challenge. That can definitely be a challenge for some business owners when we're looking at cross-generational hires.
Yeah, have you noticed? Well, what I have noticed is that this generation kind of wants a company to stand for something, and very prominently, Michael Jordan was known to have said back in, I don't think, the '80s when he signed with Nike, well, Republicans and Democrats wear sneakers, right? Which I thought was a great line, and and his point was very clear. And I'm thinking to myself, like, we live in a society that is 8.5 billion people strong. Like, honestly, the fact that is it really that weird in 2025 that you're going to bump up, especially in America, that's kind of very has a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds. Like, is it really that weird that we're going to come up across someone who thinks something completely differently than we think? Like, how do we get to this point where that's a weird thing that someone might think something differently? But also, I find also that sometimes this generation expects you to take a stand, like some kind of entrenched stand on something that has nothing to do with your operation in business in the community.
Right. Absolutely. And that's, to me, that is a level of immaturity. It is in fact a level of I don't want to say of an individual's immaturity that they
all of them.
Like, right, like,
I just got you canceled. Welcome.
Oh, I swear. Oh, but like, to your point. So here's an example from the very personal example. I last year started dog walking and watching people's dogs. I don't have any animals. I love dogs.
Right.
And I'm like, it's something that I want to try and do. And someone was like, hey, would you mind, sitting my dog? Sure. And in that conversation, they said something. It was a political statement that I disagree with.
Mm-hmm.
And so it clued me in as to just what they believe. And I said, oh, okay. So you want to drop your dog off at 8:00 or at 7:00? And the thing, and so I was talking to someone about it afterwards, and they were like, Carrie, really? Like, you are still gonna do this? And I said, all dogs need looking after. I like hanging out with them. They're fun. They give me undivided attention and love, right? I don't care whose it is. Like, I just want to hang out with them. And this individual needs someone to look at. Like, it's not that serious. You can have your own beliefs,
right? And
we can, to some extent, and we can still do like a business transaction. And that's the way I view it. When we start having conversations where people are not being respectful, or they, their beliefs and their actions or even their business harms other people, I want to be able to sleep at night. And so that, for me, that's where I draw the line. But the coddling and such, to some degree, we can talk to your mama if you need a hug.
It's a balanced approach, right? To be able to effectively communicate that it was funny. I feel like people find it weird to think that you're okay with everyone today, which kind of boggles my mind, because I can't say for all of human history, but for most recent modern human history, especially in this country, it was like that up until a certain point, and then things changed. And it's become this thing where people are now like, really, like, how do you do that? Like, how do I just work and live, and how can I accept groceries from people who,
right,
whatever, like,
Right.
who support this side or that side. It doesn't really matter, because I think it, and now we're getting off the topic of business a little bit, but like, I think in some degree it comes down to who you have to be comfortable with yourself, and
Yes.
you have to have something outside of that framework. Like, you have to be a person for whom life isn't about black or white. Like, if you're a
Right.
person that enjoys the
Right.
array of what life
Yeah.
has to offer,
Yeah.
those people, in my opinion, tend to not get caught up in the
Absolutely.
nonsense and the trivialities that come with people who are more shallow minded when it comes to that stuff.
Absolutely. And you can, let's circle all the way back, right? As the business owner or business leader, you can establish those boundaries within your organization. And then if you are attempting to do some training, right?
Mhm.
Not training on that, but training on a particular skill set within the context of that organization, that's when you'll have buy-in, right? Like when you remove as many barriers as possible and people are feeling safe, they can, they feel safe enough to share. Like, I'm just brainstorming out loud. I don't know if this idea is good or not, but let's see what happens, right? That's how innovation happens. It's
Right.
there was some level of safe space for people to explore ideas.
How do you get your employees out of a rut if they're in a rut?
I ask them why. Why are you in this rut? Why do you think this why do you think that you are here? Or what do you believe led you to being in this rut? Like,
Mm.
you can't fix a problem if you don't understand the core
Mhm.
of the problem. And the only way that we can understand it is to simply ask why and then be quiet and listen.
Mhm.
And so, so often, people are in positions where they'll say, come in, I need to check you on some things.
Mhm.
Well, why are you in a rut? Why are you not excelling like you used to? But then there isn't really opportunity for listening to happen
Sure.
and for the individual to formulate their ideas and be vulnerable and say, this, I realize I don't want to do this work anymore. That
Mhm.
is not a light decision to come to terms with, let alone articulate. But
Right.
many people find themselves in that position. And so when you're thinking about how do I get people to move the needle, ask them about it.
Yeah.
Ask.
So I have a question that I want to ask you about becoming a better listener, and how business
Mhm.
owners and entrepreneurs can actually become tactical about active listening. But before I
Yeah.
do so, if you're watching this conversation with Dr. Graham, I want you to if you've gotten to this point in the podcast, I want you to like the podcast on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when more of these conversations come out. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, I would want you to leave a 5-star review from me, because I earn it, darn it, every single time. And also, in the description of this conversation is a link to my weekly newsletter. And in my newsletter, I talk about strategies that you can actually use to turn around your business if it's struggling or become more operationally efficient. And I give you strategies. It's a 2-minute read every Tuesday, where I'm going to give you a strategy to become more tactical about pulling yourself out of a ditch or your business, and becoming the best version of your company that you can actually be by actually implementing strategies today or tomorrow that actually just work, from my 20 plus years in business, founding and growing multiple 6 and 7-figure companies and advising companies as well doing that. Okay. Tactical question now. The big question. How does one become a better active listener? What are some tactical suggestions that you can give? Because sometimes people they get a little bit, they like to respond really fast. They
Mhm.
can't stand the injustice of someone disagreeing with them for a moment, this oppression of a person's feelings. How does one become a better active listener?
I would say the first, excuse me, the first thing is you have to have the desire to do so.
Mhm.
To your point, right? Like I always, people don't listen to me. I want them, I got something to say. You have to make up in your mind first and foremost that you want to work on and improve your active listening skills. That's the first thing. Practicing on your loved ones is always, or strangers, is really critical. So
Mhm.
it's, people will say, I want to do this thing, but they don't want to practice it. So even if it's a skill you're developing for work, for your business, practicing it with friends, with family, with the dog, with a neighbor, that is going to help you transfer that skill to your business and to work. So find multiple ways to practice. Very specifically, one of the exercises that I used to give people in leadership development trainings that I did is to have a conversation with someone, a 5-minute conversation, and do not say a word and only focus on what they're saying. You cannot formulate while they're speaking, formulate your statement.
Mhm.
It's because when you are waiting for a break or a pause in the conversation, or you're formulating what you want to say, you are in fact not actively listening.
Right.
And so it's hard for many people to do that one piece of that one activity. And I would say that's a great place to start, is stop looking for the pause and creating the thing that you want to say. Another thing, Micah, is to be okay with silence.
Yeah.
Oftentimes people are speaking and they're kind of saying words because they don't want the silence to be there. And that having silence is an important part of active listening and conversation in general.
Mhm. No, I think that's a good suggestion, and it's something that people have to learn more of. It's You can be so much more effective slowing down and
Mhm.
listening than you can be trying to force a person to um, drink from the fire hose of your thoughts on a daily basis, for sure.
Right, right.
So, how can you get your employees to be interested in learning to upskill themselves and they're better functioning employees in your company? Because I'll give you an example. So one of the companies I run is a specialty contracting company. And, when I just happen to be an intellectual, and so I have an academic mind. So whenever I undertake any initiative or pursuit, I look for a deep understanding of whatever I'm doing. Most
Mhm,
people aren't like that. Most people
mhm,
are not on the right till of distribution when it comes to curiousness.
mhm.
I am. And so, curiosity, I should say. Um, and And so, how do you get them to value learning in this sense? Is it always about attaching, if you get this certification, then you'll earn more money to it? Or how do you get them to connect with just the process of learning to be better?
Yeah, that's a great question. You have got to get them to engage with the learning experience, as well as um, changing, recognizing that they will undergo some level of change, whether it's change in skill set or change in belief. So, one of the ways that I encourage people to engage others is to make it meaningful, make the learning experience meaningful to them, right? So, Micah, I know you're here to learn how to cut down trees. I'm going to teach you how to cut down a tree. What's
Mhm.
your experience with cutting down trees? What's your experience with trees in general? Do you even like being outside? And you wait and you listen. And then, depending upon what your response is, I'm able to frame our session of how to cut down this tree in a way that is meaningful to you
Mm,
based on what you said. So again, it goes back to what I said earlier. You have to understand who the people are and what they bring to the table in order to frame things for them.
mhm.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with like let's say that you're a manager in a firm with 200 people,
Yeah.
uh, 500 people, or even a team of 50, how do you learn who they are?
There's so many ways. There are so many ways. There are the using surveys, right?
Mhm,
But it's not enough to simply say, "Oh, let me just create a survey," right? Every aspect of your data collection needs to be intentional,
mhm,
right? So you can ask one question, but in that one question, you're able to glean two data points. So two different pieces of information, right?
mhm.
So like using a survey, that's one way. If you are if you have an organization of 500 people, but this particular training is for your executives or for your managers, what information already exists about them,
Right.
right? Like you have that somewhere. It's simply a matter of identifying that information and then analyzing it and making sure it's a current representation of the people.
So that brings me back to the my stupid framework that I use for business owners. It always offends people initially, and then when they realize it stands for a basket of mistakes that business owners make, they calm down and they become more interested. Um, the I in stupid before the D is ignoring feedback. That
Yeah.
is one of the 6 mistakes that I've identified that business owners make, and that's ignoring feedback from all stakeholders, partners, business partners,
Mhm.
or their employees, because
Yeah.
there are no feedback loops that are defined, and even if they're not in a position to have the resources to be able to create mechanisms for feedback loops, you can still create feedback loops if you have a small firm simply by asking with regularity.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to that point, to your eye, with ignoring feedback as data, oftentimes people will have the information, but then they sit on it.
Mhm,
And that is also a form of ignoring it,
mhm.
right? Like if you're making every business decision that you make, it should in fact be an informed decision.
Yeah.
And what informs you is the existing data, and the same holds true with developing training programs. There's data, you need to use the data to make informed decisions about it.
Mm, excellent. I could
Mhm.
talk to you all day.
Same
This
here.
was awesome. I had a really good time. If people watching want to reach out to you for a consultation on how they can leverage, your consultation, your approach to increasing communication in their firm, how can they get a hold of you?
They can reach me at drdrcarriegraham.com. There is a big button at the top to schedule a consultation, and there are a plethora of resources to help small and medium-sized business owners improve how they support their workforce, even if that includes around communication.
Awesome. That's great. Dr. Carrie Graham, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and enlightening me, my delight in
Oh,
self.
well, thank you. Thank you for having me, Micah. I appreciate having conversation about stupid stuff and about the unethicalness of a generation. Thank you for having me.
Glad that I can fit an entire generation of people that might at some point work for me. But that's okay. We'll be canceled together. You and I will
Yes.
be canceled together like Titanic on the door when they were hanging on for dear life. Try not to.
Yes. That'll be us. That'll be us.
She's Dr. Graham. I'm Micah. And just don't forget. I always mess up the closing, but here we go. If you don't go about doing your business, you're going to be doing the business of someone else. I believe that. So get to your business. Until next time, we're out of here.